Madam Leader, thank you very much for joining us today on Behind the Curtain at such a busy time. There's been a lot of commentary saying the president is at his lowest point of power domestically, overseas. You understand power very viscerally. Yeah. Where would you say this president stands at the moment?
I think that the president stands very strongly in a very strong position at this time. He has shown that he is willing to take actions that are not necessarily popular, but go with the job of commander-in-chief. I think that any of the success we're having diplomatically, we would never have had without the thought that we would take military action. This is not popular. I can tell you this as a progressive Democrat, that you can, it's really hard because we have a responsibility that is different from an advocacy position. But I have confidence that these things ebb and flow, and that the president, I think he's in a strong position. He has, what are some of the issues that people are concerned about? Use of force in Syria? He believes in it, he's doing it. Protecting the Affordable Care Act, which is transformational in the lives of the American people. Bravo for the president for standing tall with that. He's up against a multi-million dollar campaign to take that down, and it takes its toll in the polls.
And it sounds like you think he's also getting a bad rap on style points, as he would say.
On style points?
That was a phrase the president used the other day, saying that that's not how he judges himself. But it sounds like you think he's getting a bad rap on how he's handling his presidency.
Well, I don't. I think he's handling his presidency with great seriousness, with great conviction, values-based, and in a way that he's answerable to accountable to the American people for the result that will come from it, without necessarily having it be popular at the moment. I do think, and I say this all the time, my colleagues hear me say it all the time, that, quote President Lincoln, public sentiment is everything. And it's not only important to do the right thing, it's not only important to make the good judgments, it's important to prepare the American people for some of those decisions, whether it's accepting the affordable health care, and what it means to people, whether it's action to go into Syria, whatever what he did on Wall Street reform. People still think we haven't done enough on Wall Street reform. And why hasn't all of it been implemented? Because Wall Street keeps standing in the way of that implementation. But you have to make that clear.
You pointed out some Republicans see the president's failure as their responsibility. It's a remarkable thing. What do you make of the Republican scorn for this president?
I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. I haven't seen anything like it. I guess the closest I've seen since my service in Congress was in a very irresponsible way when the House impeached President Clinton, because he was an effective president. This is an effective president. And not only that, he has the power of being a largely nonpartisan president. If the Democrats had any complaint about the president, it's that he's not complaining about the do-nothing Republican president, do-nothing Republican Congress. You know that. That's one of the major complaints. But that's not who he is. He's more, that's not what he brought to the White House.
It seems to be personal. Why is that?
You know why it is. You know why it is. He's brilliant. He has a vision for our country. He's brilliant, has knowledge of the issues and judgment about what the right path would be, respectful of other people's views. He thinks in a strategic way on how to get something done and sustain an initiative by having as much support for it as possible. And he's completely eloquent to convey a message to the American people. That's a package that they don't like. He's effective. Anyone who's effective. Look at me, I'm effective, I'm a target, but I'm not the president, so it doesn't matter. But in my small way, I became a target because I was getting a job done. They know that he can take this country to a place that is not only about survival for people, which is where he pulled us out from, not only about success for many more people, but transformative in terms of the opportunity for entrepreneurial thinking and many more young people involved in how we lift people up rather than being wedded to the status quo.
Do you think race is a piece of it?
You'd have to ask them. You'd have to ask them.
But what do you detect? What do you think?
Well, I think that I noticed when President Clinton was president that the Republicans were going to go after him. I mean, the minute he was elected, it wasn't even until inauguration, because they didn't think he was one of them. He wasn't one of them. And maybe they just think that this president, as with President Clinton, because of his upbringing and his personal story of success and the rest, although he had the Ivy League and the Georgetown and Ivy League education, he wasn't rooted where most of the former presidents came from.
So it was like with President Clinton, it was like a class thing, or what are you saying?
Yeah, I mean, it was how could he have defeated President Bush? And I love President George Herbert Walker Bush. There's nothing negative about him. But I could see in the attitude, the condescension that they had, and what manifestation did they make of it? Impeachment. Impeachment.